Hello, everyone. Welcome to the second episode of Tech Talk, the IEEE Must podcast. I am Ruchi.
I'm Meenal.
And I'm Vanshika.
We are very excited to welcome our special guest for today's episode. She is the co founder of Code for Cause. She was an outreach intern at OpenRefine and a Google Coding mentor. Currently, she is an intern at Red Hat and also she got selected for the MLH Fellowship. So let's welcome very talented and inspirational Miss Ekta Mishra. Thank you so much, Ekta Di, for being our guest.
Hello, hi Ruchi, Vanshika, Meenal, and thanks to all of you and especially the IEEE Society of your college for inviting me in this podcast. And I'm really excited for this one. Yeah.
So let's get started. तो एकता दी जैसे कि आपके इंट्रोडक्शन में अभी रुचि ने मेंशन किया, there was a lot about open source. So I would like to ask you about your journey as an open source contributor. Like, how did you start it as a beginner, and how is it going?
Okay, so if someday I will get a chance to write about my whole journey or something similar to it, so I think like I'll repeat the word open source 1,000 times or maybe more than that. So I am very thankful to like open source organizations and communities and people who are like very active in open source world for whatever I am today and whatever I'll achieve later in my life because I have learned and I have achieved, I have earned everything from open source only. So if I have to like describe my open source journey and if I talk about the very beginning of my journey, so I started open source contribution and engaging with open source communities from JBoss community because initially in my early first year I started learning Java, and then I found that I am having a strong and keen interest in Java, so I decided to do competitive programming, DSA development, everything in Java. So I started looking for organizations that are based on Java in open source, and Anuj Bhaiya was there to always guide me, and he was the person like to motivate everyone around himself for contributing to open source. And if not contribution, then at least we should be like thankful. We should be supportive towards open source because even if you don't contribute, even if you don't know much about open source, you are using open source in one or another manner. So then I got to know about JBoss organization, and I started exploring some projects in JBoss organization. Most of the projects in JBoss community are based on like core Java or maybe framework related to Java, that is Spring Boot, Spring MVC, etc. So at that time I was aware of core Java, basic Java, but not any framework like Spring Boot, Spring MVC, Theme Leaf, etc. So then I started learning these kind of frameworks, and I learned very well, and I was able to like study, make some dummy projects and some good projects. Even I made my industrial training project that is like being completed in the second year or end of second year, so it should be submitted to your college. I completed that project also in Spring Boot only, but at that time I was new to open source, and I was very new to Spring Boot, Spring MVC, these kind of framework also. So I was not exactly able to contribute to these major projects, but I was very active in the community, in the Gitter chat, in their Slack channels, etc. So later on, at the end of that year in which I started exploring open source world, I got selected as a Google Coding mentor, and that was my first chance to be the part of any open source program. Now Google Coding is not continued by Google, and we don't have this program now. It has ended when it was like 10 years. It completed their 10 years of Google Coding program, and that was the last year, and in their last year I got selected as a mentor in Google Coding. So I feel sometimes lucky about that fact. So there I got a lot of inspiration from students which were participating in that program. It means students which were mentees to us. So there they were like students from 13 to 17-year-old school students, and they were participating and contributing to projects in JBoss organization very actively based on OOPS, GitHub tasks, Java collections, projects like Quarkus, Debezium that are mainly used in middleware. So I got my inspiration, motivation from them, that if they can do it, why not us? Why not I? So then I felt like I should participate in some of the open source programs that are for university students. So majorly two names were there: Google Summer of Code or Outreachy. So the application of Google Summer of Code was a little bit delayed at like it will start in March, and at that time the applications were open for Outreachy. So I decided to apply for Outreachy. I filled my initial application, wrote answers whatever had in my mind at that time, and whatever I had past experience with open source. So that was the first thing I tried. I was very sure that I'm not going to be selected in Outreachy, because in Outreachy only 50 students, around 50 participants get selected out of like 3500 or more than 3500 participants. So the chance of getting selected was very low, but I tried because I wanted to contribute to open source. I didn't wanted at that time to get selected in one of these programs. I just wanted to contribute in some XYZ open source organization. So there I first targeted Ceph project that was based on Python. And as I earlier told, that I was more proficient in Java, but I thought like, why not give it a try to some other project based on some field in which I'm not an expert, or I don't find that as my specialization. Because at that time there was no project based on Java, so I started with Ceph project first. But later on, when the contribution period was just going to start, 3-4 days were left, so there was this organization Open Refine, totally based on core Java, and it came in the list of the projects participating, and I just switched my project from Ceph to Open Refine. But it was never like I wasted my time while studying and contributing to Ceph. You always get to know something new, you always get to know something exciting and some knowledge while contributing or learning about something. So later on I got many benefits for contributing to Ceph. I'll discuss it later. So I'll talk about Open Refine. Then I decided to contribute to Open Refine. I contributed in the contribution period, the 1 month contribution period. I made significant contribution. Always think about like quality contributions, not quantity. So I'll not just say I made this much XYZ number of PRs. I made quality contributions, and then I got selected as Open Refine in Open Refine organization as an outreach intern. So that was like my journey in open source, and from there I have never stopped contributing in open source, and I will not. I'll keep contributing in whatever organization in which my ideology will match, and I'll think that yes, this is the organization I want to contribute. Here is some bugs, some feature that I can implement, and I'll contribute that.
Yeah. So I would like to ask that what are the main benefits of contributing? Like, what do we get after contributing in an open source organization?
Okay, so there are many of benefits of contributing in open source world, but the benefits like vary from one person to another person. Some people contribute for their XYZ reason, but I'll tell what were the main key points why I was contributing to open source. So first thing, life project. When you are in your first year, second year, and not first year exactly, second year, third year, you start looking for internship opportunities, and there is this hustle in the college students that if you will not get good internship, the chances of getting placed in good companies, that also gets reduced. So people start chasing for internship opportunities, and they get trapped in some XYZ companies which ask money from you, that you should pay to that company for providing you internship just because they are providing you a live project to work on. But in reality, that is just a trap, and they are just exploiting students and their feelings. They are not providing anything live project, no good experience, nothing. And you should never pay for getting any internship. No company, like they do this thing, scam on name of Google, Microsoft, this. No company ever, no good company ever ask a student to pay to them, then they will provide you internship. No good company ever does this. So live project in open source, most of the big open source communities, organization, projects, whatever their projects are, that is the live project, and that is being used by thousands and lakh of people every day. So there you get exactly the feeling of life project. There you get exactly the experience of working in an industry. Mentor support is extremely good in open source, because anyone who is like contributing to that project from a significant time, 2 3 years, 1 years, 2 years, they can act as a mentor to you. There should not be a particular assigned mentor in an organization that will always guide you. Anyone who is like significantly contributing to that project, they can act as a mentor to you. And friendly culture, like in open source, there is no culture of like saying sir, ma'am, or anything respected. These kind of words, salutations, that are not required in an open source organization or community. You can talk with respect, with very friendly attitude, while calling them with their first name, and they will never feel offended, because there they keep everyone on a same pace, everyone on a same platform. They don't feel like I am contributing to this organization from last 10 years, I am very senior person, you are just like some newbie person who just joined the organization 1 or 2 days ago. They never make you feel like this. So the environment while working in that organization is extremely good. Fourth thing, no process for selection. Like if for getting an internship and for getting that industry experience, you should like apply, then get your resume shortlisted, then appear for some coding test, interviews, etc., etc., and then you get an internship and you get to work. But here there is no process for selection. You can like just get up any day and decide that I want to contribute in this open source organization, because their ideology is something I really want to work with. That community, this project is something that is using the tech stack I know, or I am interested in learning that. So you can just get up and you can start contributing to that organization. No one is going to stop you. No work pressure. No one is going to like pressurize you that this particular task should be done till this timeline, till this end of day or something. No, they never do that. Whenever you get time, like you have weekend, you have holidays, and you want to do some significant work in their organization, you can always come and look for some issues, work on that. And tech stack, the tech stack they are using in open source world, about like 90-95% in the IT industry don't know about those tech stacks. They are using that kind of amazing tech stacks. So these are some key points why I contributed to open source. But every person have like different perspective and different reasons why they want to contribute to open source, and you should always like look for some particular reasons why open source, why I should contribute to open source. And you should not go for things like he contributed because he wanted this outcome from open source and I'll contribute because of the same reason. No.
Okay. So Ekta Di, like I started contributing very recently, and like I'm an absolute beginner. So there were certain difficulties in selecting the project and other stuffs. So are there any tips for people like me, like who have just begun contributing?
Yes, a few points I would like to like highlight. How to select a particular project or organization, and how to decide that this is the organization I should really work into. First of all, explore your own interest. Never go for a project or organization just because like some tech influencer or someone said that this is a good project, you should contribute in. No, you should explore your own interest. Your friend is contributing in Mozilla or JBoss or Apache, and you also decided that I should also go and contribute to those organizations. We should never do these kind of things. Always explore your own interest. Always see in which tech stack you are really interested to work in. For example, I was always clear in my mind that I want to contribute to some organization which uses tech stack as basic JavaScript or Python or Java. So I chose one of the organization that was like based on this. Always like think about which skills are you comfortable with, what all technology or tech stack attracts you a lot, and what all you know at the current moment, and which all things are there in which you are keen to learn. Like you don't know that particular tech stack, but you are interested to learn that. For example, for me it was DevOps. Like 4 5 months ago, I was very like amazed with DevOps field. I was not aware of anything about DevOps, but I always wanted to work in this field. And when I get a chance and asked in Red Hat, like in which field you wanted to work in, you want to work in. So I said that either DevOps or GitOps. So I'll be happy to work in this field. And they provided me a project that is like close enough to DevOps, not exactly DevOps, but close enough. So always explore your own interest. Reason why I'm saying that is that, for example, just take an example of Google Summer of Code. So this year, the guidelines for Google Summer of Code has been changed a little bit, but I'll talk about the guidelines that were in last year. So for example, you get selected in an organization, somehow you get selected, you made 1 2 PRs, 1 2 contributions in that organization, and that were good, and they select you. And then we have to complete this 3 months program, Google Summer of Code, as a student developer in Google Summer of Code. And there are 3 evaluations. This year only 2 evaluations are there, but last year there were 3 evaluations. So for example, you get selected in that organization, but now surviving those 3 months has become very difficult for you, and you don't want to work in that organization, you don't want to work on that particular tech stack, you always feel frustrated, irritated, and then you got fail in first or second evaluation. Feel the like pain at that moment. This is the worst kind of feeling. This is the worst feeling in the world, that you get selected in Google Summer of Code and then you get fail in first, second, third, or any evaluation. So if you want to do that internship, or that complete that student program very gracefully, happily, and with like flying colors after completing that program, always explore your own interest, own tech stack, and then choose the particular project or organization.
Great. So this was like such a good tips for like us beginners who have recently started exploring the open source. So I want to talk about Code for Cause. Right, like Code for Cause is now such a big community. So I want to know, like, how did you get involved with Code for Cause, and what was your inspiration behind starting Code for Cause?
Okay, so Code for Cause was like, Code for Cause is something like initiative turned into a startup. And earlier we were not very clear, like we want this or we want something else to do. So we were discussing this fact because we were part of a similar institute like 1.5 years ago. We all, like whatever the core members and co-founders of Code for Cause right now, so we all were a part of an institute, and we saw some drawbacks, some limitations there, and we tried to like first fix those limitations there only. We had conversation with the management and all, but they were very reluctant, very hesitant to accept those suggestions and to remove those limitations. Then we had this we were like having regular discussion over this particular topic, like if someday we will have some kind of initiative, we will do this, we will do that, but none of us like ever had that guts or ever have had that like enough time to do something. And initially we thought like we required uh, a lot of investment, a lot of human power, etc. So we never decided to start this. But when COVID hit everything and we were in amid of that particular situation, so colleges were shut, schools were shut, and interesting thing is that at that time outreachy final application deadline was close to that time. GSOC applications were open at that time. So students were continuously asking different type of queries, like if I want to apply for this, can you review my application, how to contribute, can you please guide me, and all. So at that time we realized that there is a guidance, there is a need to guide students in something we had a little bit knowledge. We are not saying that at that time we were expert in those field, but we were like someone who had a little bit more experience than newbies, or than a student who just stepped into first year or second year and from their school to college life. So we thought that how can we guide them, how can we provide guidance. And first challenge was we can't do anything at that time in person, we have to do something virtually. So we decided to open a YouTube channel. We named that channel as Code for Cause. We had our first session based on basic Python programming. So at that particular webinar got a lot of support, got like about 2K views in few hours. We got around 500 subscriber in just 1 or 2 days. So surprisingly that was something to boost everyone's power in our team, and everyone was like no matter what we will do in future, but we will keep on doing these kind of sessions. Then we had 1 session, 2 session, 3 session, overall a 5 session we did, and we completed like, if someone will go through that 5 session, if he or she will have a complete knowledge about basic Python programming language. Then we created our Telegram channel, WhatsApp groups, and many other things, that we can Discord channel, so that we can connect to students. And then we get a lot of feedback, suggestions, requests that please do webinar on Flask, webinar on web, webinar on automation, webinar on ML, web, whatnot. So then we keep on doing these kind of webinars. Then we started our ML bootcamp. So ML bootcamp was a super hit thing in our Code for Cause total whatever experience we have. So after ML bootcamp, we had Java DSA, data structures and algorithm bootcamp for free, and we got so much of support, love from students that motivated us to open this startup, to start this startup. Earlier we thought like we need a lot of investment. Yes, we required a bit of investment, and that investment we didn't withdraw any money from anyone outside. Whatever we earned through our open source programs, like I earned through Outreachy, and many other earned through Google Summer of Code, or whatever programs XYZ. So whatever we earned during our student life, we invested that in our startup, and with God grace, it's growing, it's getting a lot of support, it's getting a lot of love. We are having paid batches now. Just that one thing I'll add as a tip, that if you or anyone who is right now listening to this podcast and want to start a startup or become entrepreneur, anything, feel this point that you don't need any kind of like great investment or anything. You just need a set of like-minded people, a set of people that are on the same page, that are having same mindset, that are having same end goals towards a particular thing. They want to achieve the same thing. Then you can start a successful startup, and you don't need anything else right now at that point.
That is so true, Iktadi, because like we have gained so much from Code for Cause. Especially the YouTube channel. It is filled with like so many great videos where like I personally have got great guidance which I did not get from my college. So Code for Cause has connected so many students around India, and like we are also part of tech communities in our own colleges. Like Code for Cause is such a big community now. What do you think? Like, why are tech communities so impactful? Why are they so important? And like, what are like benefits of being in a tech community like Code for Cause?
First of all, for example, Code for Cause ambassador program or like campus leader program. So we as a community, we are growing, and we right now we have like 18K plus students connected with us through Telegram or WhatsApp, and many are connected through Discord, and some are connected through mailing list, and much more, and about 50K subscribers on our YouTube channel. So we are growing as a community. But what we decided, and what we expected from our campus leaders, that if we are running a large community, they are learning from us, and they are capable, and they can guide, they can create their own small community within a college, because they get to connect with us. They got like enough guidance, and they are like working every day in our campus leader group. People say that I got selected in this program, I got selected this is for this scholarship, this internship, I got placed, I had this workshop in my college, and that feels very good. Like we are able to motivate them, and we are able to provide them guidance. But when you create a small community within your college, you get additional values and skills add on to your personality. That is first thing is leadership quality. Second thing is for teaching, always that particular person also studies and explores a lot of things. For example, if you, Ruchi, Vanshika, meaning Meenal, anyone, if you, one of you, want to take a workshop on basic data structures and algorithm, a small workshop, 2 or 3 hour workshop, uh, even if you have a lot of knowledge about DSA, before going for that workshop, you will like revise all your concept, you will look for new resources, you will explore online, and you will study a lot, so that you can provide a very good, very in-depth knowledge in that small time of span. So this is how you learn, this is how you empower, by empowering others. So this is the main ideology why we started this campus leader program. And then you can transfer knowledge from one person to another, that person to 10 or more people. So this is how we can like transmit knowledge, transmit skills. So because we can't get directly connected with each one of the student in each of the college in India. So this is how we can like spread, we can share our initiative. And why these tech communities are powerful, why they are impactful. First thing is the communities which are not very much money minded, which are not there just to make their profit, only those communities are powerful, and only those communities have like great impact. You can get obviously you can like charge for some particular things, because if you will not charge for anything, how you will be able to provide them with good number of like mentors, good number of resources and other things. And you will also need many other resources for organizing workshops and many things. So you can charge, but you can charge reasonably, not just to make profit. Because most of the time you will see that edtech industry has been made a profit making industry. So the communities whose end goal, whose target is just to empower others, just to like motivate others, guide others, they are really becoming powerful, because they are getting a lot of support from the student community. Because if you don't get like support from student community, you can't do anything in this industry.
Yes, Ekta, that is completely true. Plus, personally speaking, me, that is Meenal, and Ruchi are also the campus leaders, and हमें उससे इतनी हेल्प मिली है. वहाँ की कम्युनिटी, वहाँ के लोग इतने अच्छे हैं, एक दूसरे को इतना सपोर्ट करते हैं, अपॉर्चुनिटीज सब एक साथ शेयर करते हैं, एंड इट्स रियली लाइक ये सब एक साथ ग्रो कर रहे हो. So it has been really nice. Also, you talked about outreachy before. So can you tell us a little more about your experience? Like we're talking about Ceph and all.
Okay,
So yeah.
so if I talk about like outreachy, so as I discussed that initially I chose Ceph to contribute into, and Ceph was a project based on Python. Ceph is a very complex project. It's not someone like who just started learning Python and he will decide to contribute in. You need to like have certain knowledge about object storage, cluster storage, file storage, and then maybe a little bit knowledge of Kafka, OpenShift, etc., Tautology, etc. These kind of tech stack. Then only you can like have a complete knowledge about Ceph, and then you can contribute. So if you are like deciding to contribute to Ceph, you will need to do a little bit of homework, like about 20-25 days. You will have to study, explore, and get connected with people who are involved in this community. But I also invested about 22 days, and 22 days just to set up that project locally in my system. And thereafter I switched obviously to OpenRefine, because at that time there was no Java project. When I saw a Java project in the list of outreachy participating project, I switched to that because I felt like I will be more comfortable in that organization. But I never felt like I wasted my 22 days, and 22 days that also on the peak time when everyone was contributing and everyone has already decided. Because whatever you learn, whatever you explore online, it will help you and you will get results for that later on. For example, now I am a Red Hat intern. I work in OpenShift logging team, and OpenShift logging team closely work with OpenShift storage interface team, and that OpenShift storage team work with the Ceph storage team. So whenever there is a cross team meeting, or there's some discussion related to 2-3 projects interconnectedly, you are able to be the part of that conversation. If you don't know anything about that particular project, you will be someone like what they are talking about, I'm not able to understand a single word out of it. So you get to be the part of that important conversation, and there people uh, feel very amazed with your conversation, that you are working in a very different team and you know about the products, about the projects of other teams. So that is the point of appreciation at that time. So never feel like you, because in open source you contribute, you invest your time, but results, you get results a little bit late. And because the outcome what we are getting from open source are not evident enough immediately. If you are exploring using that project, you will get to observe the result, but it will take some time obviously. So you should need to be like patient, consistent, and polite in that organization, because sometimes we see that people are asking doubts, and if they are not getting reply for their doubts or query or error messages or something they have posted in Gitter, Slack, chat, they feel like no one is helping, no one is providing attention to them or something. They should understand that in open source it is something that is working around the whole globe. So people are working in different time zones. We should wait, we should respect their task also, because they also have some work and they are doing this open source thing voluntarily. Many times people do this voluntarily, they don't get paid for it. So they should respect their feelings. Later on, after Ceph, I moved to OpenRefine, and in OpenRefine I got very nice people like Antonin, Antonin Delphiage, Tom Morris. So they were very nice people, very kind, very helpful, very supportive. And I started first using that project, picked a very good first issue. But even in large projects, those good first issues are also not very easy. Uh, but my good first issue was like pretty
Hmm.
easy. I have to make changes in the like translation files, because OpenRefine was available in many languages. So there were translation files in many languages for particular error messages or anything. So whatever written in the OpenRefine UI, you can get that messages in many other languages. So I made a change in those translation files, and since there were many languages, so about 30 to 33 files got changed with a change in single word. I changed that word in all those translation files. So if you open that PR, it looks like very good PR, but in reality, that is not something very techy or something very complicated. It's just like I changed 33 files, but it was not something complicated. So later on, I keep contributing to that, and then I drafted my final proposal, and I'll suggest everyone who is participating to Google Summer of Code, Outreachy, or similar programs to this, that if you are submitting your final proposal, get it reviewed by your mentor or whatever the respective person is, whom you think that he will check or he will go through your application later on when the deadline will be over. So get it reviewed by him, because if you get it reviewed by them, they will definitely provide you some suggestion. And if by applying those suggestions your application got changed about like 30-35%, so be sure that at least that 30-35% of that application is something you made after their suggestions, so that will be something that will be liked by them. So your chances of getting selected is increased. So always get your application reviewed at least 1 week before the last date of submission. I did the same. He provided me feedback, and then I improved my final proposal. And always in the final proposal, be very specific, be very detailed about each and everything. You have to provide a detailed timeline of 3 months, that if you get selected as an intern, what you will do in order to complete this project in these 3 months. So you have to provide the details of every week, that this week I'll do this, I'll complete UI, I'll complete test or whatever thing. So be very descriptive and very clear and very detailed while writing your final proposal. Don't be like go into so much detailing that your final proposal will be like more than 8 pages or something. End that final proposal in 5 to 6 pages. That's all, so that it will be crisp and good, and people are interested in reading your final proposal. Generally in Outreachy, there is no system for like interviews, but my mentor took an interview of mine before selecting me. So there was an interview in which it was kind of informal interview. He just wanted to know what all past projects I have completed and what all experience I have, how much I understand OpenRefine, how much I understand Wikidata, because I had to like work closely with the Wikidata team. So he just wanted to know like how much I'm aware of these kind of technologies, and would I be like a good candidate for this internship. And then on 4th May 2020, I got the result that I got selected as an OpenRefine outreach intern in OpenRefine organization. That was the moment, and I can't compare that moment with any other moment in my life. Before that, I was the happiest person when I got selected as student of the year in my school. And then this is the most happiest moment in my life till now. And after that, my life changed, because once you get selected as an outreach intern or a Google Summer of Code student, your life gets changed a little bit, because you get a lot of attention. You suddenly get a lot of LinkedIn requests. You suddenly get a lot of DMs, messages on LinkedIn, for followers on Twitters, and congratulation messages are like spammed in your inbox. So you get a celebrity kind of feel. Not exactly celebrity, but you get a lot of attention from student community. So and that all of these things come in just a click, in just a minute. So sometimes you are not able to understand what happened right now. Is this really so great achievement? So I am very thankful that I got I'm very thankful to Anuj Bhaiya and to many others who guided me throughout my journey. so that I got selected as an outreachy intern. Then I completed my internship, and my internship experience was great because we had regularly weekly meeting with my mentor Antonin Delfich. He is doing his PhD doctorate in Oxford University. So talking with him, interacting with him is a great thing I got through this outreachy internship. In outreachy internship, there is also a good thing that you get to interact with past interns, past mentors, current mentors of other organization, current interns of other organizations, and outreachy organizers. So networking opportunity is great. It's amazing that you get a lot of networking opportunity through open source programs and through open source contribution. So that's one more point why you should go for a open source things. Yeah, so that was like long story about internship. Yeah.
Also, Ekta for the first proposal, like we in which the essays and all those things are asked, तो अच्छा ऐसे कैसे लिखें, like जिससे
Uh,
सिलेक्ट होने के चांसेस
ओके,
थोड़े
सो
like बन
अच्छा
जाए यहाँ
लिखने
पे?
का आई विल से कि टेक टाइम, लाइक many application what I have reviewed which generally get rejected. So for like important points, so that you don't get rejected, selected points for getting selected is different. So that you don't get rejected, highlight these points, that first of all invest a good amount of time, like at least take 2-3 days to write your application. Don't be like I have decided that I'll submit today, so anyhow I'll submit it today. No, don't be this kind of person. Invest about 2-3 days, write good answers, uh, understand what the question is expecting from you, and don't write too much, don't write too less also. Like at least write about 200 words, about 200 words. Like this is what I have observed, that answers in around 200 words is good enough. They say about 400 or something, 400 to 600 characters or something. So many people interpret that characters as word. They have mentioned characters. So around 200 words, it's good. So limit your answer in 200 words, around, not too less, not too much. And be very specific about things you are writing. For example, if they have asked why you feel discriminated in tech industry, so be very specific whether you want to describe that I feel discriminated on the basis of religion, on the basis of caste, on the basis of race, ethnicity, gender, or maybe on economic status, social status, something like that. For example, I wrote my application because at that time my financial condition of my house, my family was not so good. So rather than choosing writing my application on the basis of discrimination on the basis of gender, I preferred socio-economic status as my point to write the application. And my application got selected. So you should be very clear on what basis you want to write your application answers. If they ask does your learning environment involve a lot of people similar to your background, so you should understand what the question is asking from you. Because you have said you are being discriminated, this means that you belong to a minority group, minority in on the basis of anything, that can be anything. So you have to write that no, not much people share this kind of background, that's why we have to struggle a lot in tech industry. And then you have to provide an instance, an example. For example, you can give example of your college, that in college there are very few number of girls out there in my college, and in participating in events, in tech societies, in being member for these kind of society, I have to struggle a lot. And generally people don't prefer a girl to be the part of these kind of tech competition, these kind of tech communities, etc. So there I have to struggle, there I have to like get online resources or something to learn, and I don't get an environment over there to learn. So this is how you have to describe your answers. Try to understand the question better, and always try to get it reviewed by some good level of person, like if someone who is already in these kind of program, who has already been a past outreach intern, or maybe someone who has like got selected for some scholarship program or something, so they know how to write these kind of answers. So getting reviewed your answers is a very good practice, and that sometimes helps you to get selected. And always write your own story, write your own real story. Don't go for like online copy paste, because outreach organizers, outreach internship runs twice in a year, so they are reviewing a lot of applications, so they get easily know that this is a copy paste answer and this is an original application and original answer. So don't go for copy paste, don't copy paste from some past outreach interns essay. Always write your own, always write what you feel like, and your application will get selected. Keep certain things in your mind, that you should say that I am available for 40 plus hours commitment per week for the internship. See that your college should have an official calendar, according to which you should have at least 45 or 49 consecutive days for the internship, because if you don't have that much holiday period during the internship, your application will not get selected. So keep these minor things in mind, and major thing is that time commitment and that answer to that 4 essay questions. That is the main core part of that initial application.
So yeah, Ekta Di, like as you mentioned about your internships, many congratulations for being selected as Red Hat intern and outreach intern. Could you please share something about the interview process, and what are the most important things that we should keep in mind before going for an interview, like in
Okay,
campus and off
so
campus
about Red
interview?
Hat internship, I got Red Hat internship off campus. I saw a post one day on LinkedIn by the like senior TA or principal TA of Red Hat, Vidya ma'am. So I saw her LinkedIn post. I just mailed my resume, and then I got so first round was resume shortlisting, that you have to send your mail to that talent acquisition person. In our case, that was Vidya ma'am. So we sent our resume, and first round was resume shortlisting, that they were observing that if you have done some significant kind of open source contribution, you have good projects with proper readme and proper detail how to set up and proper things. So if your resume get shortlisted, so then you will get a link. I received the test link, online coding round, after 2 days after I submitted my resume. So the online coding test was on Metal or some platform similar to Metal. So in online round there were 2 coding questions and about 5 or something MCQ questions. If 1 or 2 questions were aptitude based, and rest of them was DSA and time complexity based questions. So coding round questions were not too hard. Lead code easy to medium, no hard problem was there. One was dynamic programming, and another was based on stack or something, stack or queue, something related problem. So these there were 2 problems. So so the test was not too hard for me, at least. So I completed both the coding problem completely, and answered very well in the aptitude answer. Don't know it whether I answered correct or not, but in coding problem obviously we get to know that our solution got accepted or not. So after the coding round, around after 3 days, I got mail for first technical round. So first technical round, there were 3 interviewers. All those 3 interviewers were engineers at Red Hat. So in technical round, they asked about DBMS, and not the theoretical questions on DBMS, about real life experience and in development based questions, like in case you have to create this kind of application, what will you use? You will go for NoSQL or SQL, what you will prefer, relational, non-relational DBMS, why you will choose PostGIS over MySQL or something. So these kind of questions were there in DBMS. Then they asked some operating system based questions and real life scenarios mapped with operating systems concepts. So this type of questions they asked, that you will not get these kind of questions online. This is something randomly and on spot interviewers ask. So after that, they gave me two DSA based question. One was based on tree, another was based on matrix. So, and they have asked me to code on a code for that particular problem on Google Doc. And in generally in technical interviews, you will be asked to code on plain Google Doc or maybe on some online editor. So have this practice, that if you are going for off campus things and technical interviews will be there, you will be asked to write code and you can't escape from this thing. So I performed very well. I completed those questions very fast because the questions were something I already did in past. Later on, there were two managerial rounds for me, managerial or you can say semi-technical rounds. So generally for Red Hat internship, they have one managerial round, but whatever the two managers they have invited in the interview, one was not available at that time at the first managerial round. So she took my interview later on. So for me, there were two managerial rounds. There they asked mostly about what development experience I have, what open source experience I have, what kind of open source communities or organization I have worked with. And most interesting thing is about the Ceph part, that I said that I'll talk about this later on. So they got impressed because JBoss is a community under Red Hat. Ceph is a community, open source community under Red Hat. Both these open source organizations are working under the umbrella of Red Hat. They are owned by Red Hat, supported by Red Hat. So they were truly impressed with whatever knowledge I had regarding JBoss projects and regarding Ceph projects. And I feel that if I have got this Red Hat internship, so that is totally just because of my open source contributions and knowledge I have in Ceph. Because at last round, in the managerial round, she was basically discussing things, basically just discussing, and general talks were there. And at last she asked one technical question only, that define AWS storage and Ceph storage, how will you distinguish these two? So I answered that very well, and she was impressed that yes, I am not just blabbering about that particular thing. I know concept, I have knowledge about Ceph storage. So never feel that whatever you are studying right now, that is completely waste. And right now I have completed more than 3.5 months as a Red Hat intern, and I am super happy working at Red Hat. Red Hat is a great place to work on. Generally we get very bad feedbacks from other companies where they say that our manager is like this, they pressurize us, the tech stack is not good, or so and so. Here they continuously take feedback from the interns. We interns feel like we are on a very senior position, and everyone is taking feedback from us, and they keep on trying to improve, and they try to provide you an environment where you will feel comfortable working with. And everyone is very much helpful, supportive. You get access to Red Hat University for getting online courses and certifications, and you get office laptops and all other accessories you need for doing your work. So Red Hat is a great, amazing place to work in.
Awesome, Ekta Devi. So one more thing, last question. आपने इतने सारे questions answer कर दिए हमारे. So last question है MLH fellowship के ऊपर. So what I want to apply for it soon. So what is the application process? You got selected for open source track, and So, like,
Okay.
what is
So
the
first thing
process?
is people are confused that whether they should apply for the explorer track, for the open source track, or the externship track. So what I'll suggest, that apply to all of them. In a single application, you can tick in all of those programs that I want to apply in all those, because when they will select you, they will select you for one of those tracks in which you will be like very much suitable for that track and you are eligible for that track. For example, you applied for an explorer track, but you have good number of open source contribution and good number of projects and knowledge in development field, that you can be a part of open source track, so they will select you for open source track. So don't worry that you will be selected in wrong track. So I'll say that apply to all those track, first thing. Then there are some particular question, like why you want to do MLH fellowship, why you choose MLH, these kind of questions are there. So again, I'll say that don't be like you will fill that answer in just 2 lines. Think wisely, why exactly, why you want to choose MLH. MLH has done very good number of programs in past, and they are doing right now also. They have local hack day, they provide sponsorship to a lot of hackathon, they organize a lot of hackathons on their own, they have capture the flag thing. So they have a lot of programs, they have a lot of competitions, and many way through which they guide, they provide knowledge. They have online webinars for many topic through MLH coaches take those online webinars, etc. So think about the points through which you feel that MLH is a good choice for me to do fellowship or do something equivalent to internship. So write about those points wisely. Later on, they ask about submission of the project sample or code sample. So there also people get confused that if I am applying for open source, what should I submit if I am applying for Explorer? First thing, you can apply to all of them in a single application. So you can apply a single project, and that will be applicable for all those 3 tracks. What I submitted the PR link, the link in which all my PRs were listed regarding the Open Refine project. I made around 47 plus PRs in Open Refine, so I submitted that link. You can submit something like that, that if you have made good contributions, that is not good number of good quality contributions in some good open source project, you can provide that link. If you have created some personal projects and you think that is the best project you have created throughout your journey, submit whatever best you have. And for code sample, first thing, know that you should be aware of each and every line of that particular repository or code sample you are submitting, because once you get selected for technical interview or something, they will check, they will analyze that whether you understand each and every line of your code sample or not. They will randomly ask about a particular code snippet from your submitted code sample, that do you understand this, what it does, what its functionality, how it is being invoked, or what it does in your UI or something. So they thoroughly ask questions based on that. So you should be aware of whatever you are submitting. Have a good readme that describes your project very well, that what your project is, what is its target audience, why you have created this project. If some similar kind of project already exists in market, what your project, how your project is different from that existing project, on what tech stack it is based on, what technologies, or like on what field it falls, and other things, how to set up that project, how to run that project, how to test that project, how to build that project. All those commands should be mentioned. uh, what all like necessary dependencies and these kind of things are required to run this project, because and your project should have like a little bit number of folks and likes, so get it like liked by your friends and all. So uh, because they analyze your project on this basis. And if you think that while analyzing your GitHub profile, they are going to analyze the green boxes, the green dots on green rectangle boxes on your GitHub profile. So no, they are not going to analyze those green boxes, because many people add GitHub box and GitHub bots and many other things to just increase the number of green boxes in their profile. But in reality, they see what exactly your commits are in with respect to those green boxes, in which repository you have contributed, what type of contributions you have made. You have forked a lot of number of repositories, and now the total number of repository count in your profile is 300 200 type of thing, but in those forked repositories you never contributed, so they are not going to select you. So keep these things in your mind, like what kind of code sample you have said and all these things. And generally people ask that whether we have to pay for applying for MLS fellowship. So there is an option that where they decide on the basis of country, from 5 USD to some 30 USD, that on the basis of country, how much you have to pay for the application. If you are someone who can like easily pay and who can afford to pay the fees for that application process, you can opt for yes, and you can pay for application process if you are someone who can afford it easily. And if you are someone for whom that $10 $15 is a huge amount and you can't afford it at any cost, and it will create like a it will create some like difficulties in paying that amount of fees, so you can opt for no. They are not forcing you to pay to them for the application process. They are not forcing. So MLH is very good with respect to this. Also, then there comes like how much we are going to get paid for MLH fellowship. MLS fellowship, they have not like strictly defined that if you get selected in Explorer track or open source track, you will get this amount of stipend. No, there is a need based stipend form that you will get once you get selected as an MLH fellow. So there you can fill that. Whether you really need this stipend or not, and after analyzing the responses you have filled in your need based stipend request form, they will send you a mail back that this much amount they are providing as a stipend to you. They will provide that stipend in 2 chunks, like once you will get in the halfway of your MLH fellowship and once after you get graduate. So then you can decide that is this amount of stipend is enough for you to continue with your fellowship, or you don't want to, so you can also quit at that time also. So that was about Explorer and open source. For externship, they have this like upper bound, lower bound, that at least this much amount you will definitely get, and if your project will be something large enough to that for which you should be paid enough, so they will update your stipend. But there is some lower bound that at least this much amount you will definitely get if you get selected as an in externship track.
Okay.
Okay, so that was all we wanted to ask. Iktadi, thank you so much for your time, for giving this much amount of time in a busy schedule. I'm sure that all our listeners learn so many things from your experience. So, like, is there anything you'd like to add in the end, like for college students specifically? So, college
For
कैसे balance
college
करना, like
students,
anything
I
you
never
tips
like
would be.
प्रेशराइज एनी स्टूडेंट ऑफ माइंड दैट कि तुम ये चीज़ मेरा फॉलो ही करो या एक्सेप्ट ही करो, बिकॉज देयर इज अ difference in teacher and mentor, and I generally try to act as a mentor, not exactly as a teacher. So मेरा एक जो नॉर्मल सजेशन है दैट विल बी सुनो सबकी, बट करो वो जिसके लिए तुम मतलब लेटर ऑन लाइफ में रिस्पॉन्सिबल हो सकते हो, और उसके तुम प्रोज एंड कॉन्स जो हैं वो एक्सेप्ट कर सकते हो। कि कोई भी चीज़ जो तुम मतलब जैसे किसी ने कहा कि ये चीज़ करो अच्छी होगी, तो पहले उसके लिए तुम एनालाइज करो कि जो भी वो सेकंड बंदा कह रहा है, अगर वो मैं करूँगा और उससे जो भी प्रोज एंड कॉन्स होंगे, क्या मैं उसको संभालने या झेलने के लायक हूँ। देन ओनली डिसाइड दैट कि मेरे को ये करना है या नहीं करना है. जनरली लोग कहते हैं कि मेरे कुछ सीनियर हैं वो ये कहते हैं, मेरे कुछ सीनियर हैं वो ये कहते हैं, आप ये कह रहे हो वो ये कह रहे हैं. सो आपको लाइफ में हर स्टेज पे कुछ ना कुछ लोग मिलेंगे जो कुछ ना कुछ कहेंगे ही आपको, है ना. मतलब कुछ सीनियर्स होंगे या कभी कोई होगा, वो हमेशा लाइफ में कुछ ना कुछ कहते ही रहेंगे, आपको लोग मिलते रहेंगे. नॉट इन लाइक जस्ट कॉलेज लाइफ, लेटर ऑन जॉब लाइफ और फैमिली. हर कोई अपना सजेशन देगा. बाय ह्यूमन नेचर लोग करते हैं. आपको डिसाइड करना है कि आपको क्या चूज करना है, और जो भी आप चूज कर रहे हो क्या आप इतना मतलब हो कि उसके प्रोज एंड कॉन्स झेल ले जाओगे. क्योंकि आप कल को किसी को ये नहीं कह सकते कि एकता ने मुझे ये कहा था और वो चीज मैंने एक्सेप्ट करी अपने लाइफ में एंड उससे मेरे को इतना लॉस हो गया, नाउ व्हाट शुड आई डू. बिकॉज जो भी डिसीजन आपने लिया वो डिसीजन आपका था, वो तो बस बंदा कह के चला गया. सो डिसाइड वाइजली. एंड कॉलेज में लोग बहुत मिसगाइड करते हैं, स्पेशली फर्स्ट ईयर सेकेंड ईयर को, कि ज्वाइन दिस सोसाइटी, दिस ऑर्गेनाइजेशन, बी द पार्ट ऑफ दिस फेस्ट एंड ये वो फलान ढिकाना. कॉलेज लाइफ की यार, कॉलेज लाइफ एंजॉय कैसे करोगे अगर ये नहीं करोगे, तो ये नहीं करोगे तो कॉलेज लाइफ याद कैसे करोगे. सो एवरीथिंग यू हैव टू अंडरस्टैंड, यू हैव टू डिसाइड कि क्या क्या करना है, क्या क्या नहीं करना है, किन चीज़ों से दूर रहना है, किन चीज़ों को मतलब साथ में लेके चलना है. ठीक है. So understand yourself. Yeah, that was all from my side, and I enjoyed this session a lot because I'm a person who loves to speak. So this session was something made for me. Yeah, thank you, all of you, like for like making this very interactive. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Ekta Di, for
Bye-bye.
being there.
Thank you so much, Ekta Di.
Have a nice day. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you so much to all our listeners for staying till the end. If you have any question or suggestions or feedback, then put them in the comment box. You can also reach out to us on all the social media platforms. You'll find the links in the description. If you enjoyed this episode, then please leave a like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Look forward to more episodes of Tech Talk, the IEEE Must podcast. Thanks again and goodbye.